I'm in Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Wow. And how do you find the issues with substance use and mental health access there, especially during COVID?
It's been very difficult. I feel like the system's really failed them since COVID has happened. All the resources that they normally have, like their safe places to sleep, their places to go and just take a minute, are all closed or only open certain hours now, like during the day when they used to be open all night. They're really struggling. If they're just able to go to the door, get a hygiene pack or, some food, and then they're sent on their way. They're not getting that connection that they used to. And they're not getting that love that we used to be able to give to them.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and I feel like everything was kind of just getting by as was before COVID, and then making all of these programs disposable, like the government's done, has just created so much damage to our communities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any recommendations? You were mentioning to us that you work in the outreach systems and healthcare, I guess I'm not sure how you would like to define it. But do you have any recommendations that Winnipeg could make this situation better, whether it's access to care, safe supply? I'd just love to hear any recommendations you might have.
For me, I think they need to have more programming for people over 18. I've noticed there's lots of money for kids, youth and stuff over 18, but even when an adult wants to get treatment, it's so difficult in Winnipeg and in Manitoba. They're allowed to go to Main Street Project, which is not the safest place, and some of them don't need that. Need to go there. They actually need like a treatment place, and there's no money for them. So where do they go? And it's so hard for us because it's like, well, you can go to the Salvation Army, and you don't feel good about sending them there because it's not safe.
Do you care to speak on the work that you do, or?
Yeah, I can.
We would love to hear it.
So I'm a support facilitator. So I work with girls anywhere from 13 to adult age, anywhere 45, sometimes they're 50, and they've all struggled with addictions. They've all worked on the streets. They've all been exploited. A lot of them, that's their issue. Like they'll come to us, say, well, when they're 20, and I tried to find treatment for one of my girls and I couldn't find it because there was no funding for her. There's Jordan Principle for First Nations, but they only do it till they're 18. She needed like a residential place out of the city, like say in Gimli, for example, and we couldn't send her there because there was no funding for her. It cost $20,000. Where does somebody who's coming off the street get that kind of money?
Absolutely.
And you fight for them and you say, yeah, I want them to get treatment. They're like, well, take them to Main Street Project. They go there. It's all kinds of street people there. They're not safe. They don't learn anything there. So that's kind of where my role comes in, where I try to find funding, and we try to get them get them a resume done, get them somewhere safe to sleep, somewhere safe to live, even if they don't stay there all the time. It's just somewhere where they know they can go. We try to give them as many resources as we can, but right now, like I said, with COVID, everything's shut down. So we're giving them a piece of paper with, here, you can go here, you can go here. For example, you can go to Silo Mission, you can go to Safe Space, but they're only open from 7 to 11 at night. So make sure you go there for 4 hours. But most of these guys, they're struggling from 11 to 7 a.m. There's nothing.
Absolutely.
And the winters there are so brutal too, right? Like
yes, in winter it's like minus 40, minus 50 here. It is freezing and there's nowhere for them to go. We had girls that used to come to our drop-in space and sleep, and that's all they would do for 8 hours is just sleep. They'd have something to eat and sleep, but they knew they could sleep safely. Absolutely. Now we can't have that because of COVID. You can't have anybody in your space, right? It's really frustrating.
It is, and especially access to care in terms of like a financial access, it's such a hindrance. We see it all across Canada. I have friends worldwide, and being in BC here, we have some world-class programs for detoxes and rehabs and like long-term support facilities, but they cost so much money, and they might have the funding to take in 1 or 2 people a year. Knowing how long it takes as well or how many attempts it takes some people to actually get to that point of recovering, whatever that may be to them. You know, if your family can afford it once, can they afford it 6 or 7 times?
Well, I was just gonna say, and like, I think a lot of those programs too, they're made to rehabilitate people who can afford them. A lot
Yeah.
of them don't have the skills or the knowledge or the experience to deal with the kind of like lifelong trauma that a lot of people carry, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's a big thing of it too with the addiction. They got to deal with their trauma, right? They only give them what, 21 days or 3 months, and then they say, okay, now go back to where you were. And how does that help? There's no sober housing, or the sober housing is right down the street where they used to use. I hear that a lot too.
And even in places too where like it's easy to find stability in a place where you're fully supported, where you don't have to get up
Yeah.
and worry about making money, or you don't have to get up and worry about having an argument with your partner, or just any of the things that we deal with in daily life that are stressors. For somebody in especially early recovery, those can absolutely very easily derail somebody.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Big question of what might or can help, and if we could, you know, in a perfect world, get funding, like what that would look like. But
It would be great to get the funding, but it would be great for them to be tied to somebody who could support them after they leave rehab. And a lot of them don't have that. And that's why they end up going back into the falling back off the wagon, or so we say, right? I always say to my girls, it doesn't matter how many times you fall, I'll be here every time to pick you up, and we'll start again, because it's not easy. That demon chases you.
And you know
I even
what?
told my son that, you know, like, it chases you, my boy. You got to do what you can.
And healing isn't linear. That's what I always try and tell people is like, just because you took a step backwards doesn't mean your entire path is derailed, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
so we actually met on Facebook, just while I was posting about this in a overdose awareness web Facebook page. Would you like to speak on how an overdose has touched your life?
For me, it was my son in September 11th, 2016. He had already struggled with addiction for quite a long time before that. He actually left Winnipeg and was gone for 3 years because he didn't want to come back to Winnipeg because he was trying to get clean. He was struggling with meth at that time. Um, and then he came back, met a good support system, had some really good friends. He did okay. And then I seen him like 4 days before he actually passed away. It was crazy. And I was talking to him about cocaine and fentanyl. And I'd said to him, you have to be careful because people are mixing fentanyl. And I hope you're okay. And I hope you're safe. And he's like, Mom, I'm not doing that no more. I promise you. And then on September 11th, 11 and a half hours after he had passed away, the police called me, or not even the police, the medical examiner called me to ask me if I'd spoken to the police. So I said to her, no. And she says, well, you need to call the police. I'm like, well, you've already on the phone with me. What happened? And she told me that my son had passed away, and he had passed away at his girlfriend's house. It was a mess. She didn't call an ambulance for at least 8 to 9 hours after he died. She took a bunch of stuff for him. People stole his car. It was horrible after he died, you know, and I didn't even know he actually died of an overdose for probably about 2 years. I had suspicion that that's what it was, but I didn't get anything confirmed because the police were doing an investigation, etc. They did get her for trafficking, but that's it. You know, at least that's something.
Yeah.
It's not enough, but it's something.
Well, first, I want to extend my deepest condolences for your loss. I
Thank
really
you.
hope that we can work to create a place where people aren't being lost to something as
Yes.
ridiculous as getting the wrong drugs. I just wanted to ask, it sounds like your son's drug of choice was not opiates?
No, I don't think so. He was more of a cocaine boy. From what all his friends had said too, that's kind of what he had done. He had never told me about the cocaine. I knew about the meth and I knew about the other stuff. When I got his autopsy report back, his toxicology said he had gravel and fentanyl, and they'd said that the medical examiner said it would have killed him in 20 minutes. The only thing that I still don't understand is that it was in his urine, not in his blood, which doesn't make sense. So I don't know if it was put into something that he was drinking or if it was mixed into something, because there's no cocaine in his system. So where did the fentanyl come from? His girlfriend was an opiate addict, so I'm wondering if that he started to become one. I never met her. He never brought her around me, and I can see why now.
Yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
don't, and I know why he liked her was because she was a single mom. I was a single mom, so I think he was just trying to help her on a good path, and unfortunately, it took his life.
Yeah, that is just unbelievable. Hearing your story too about a medical examiner calling you, which
Yeah.
as somebody with any loved one knows, when something like that happens, you know, and for them to just kind of leave it like that and say, like, have you talked to the cops? What would have been a better thing to happen in your opinion? Because, like, I'm hoping that maybe a medical professional or police might listen to this and say, hey, like, we're going to change how we do this. So what would have been the best way?
I would have liked either 911 or the police to have called me when they first got to the scene with him and told me that there was something wrong with my son. Like 11 and a half hours and nobody came to knock on my door or tell me anything. Like, that's a long time for a child, a 23-year-old child, to be dead with nobody knowing other than his girlfriend. And even when I talked to her, she had said the police told her she couldn't tell me anything. They had to tell me. So I didn't even see them. So then I talked to the medical examiner. He was pronounced at 10:06 p.m. So 8:46 a.m. was when I first got the call. I still didn't even talk to the police till 10:30 a.m. And when I went to the police station, they interrogated me like I should have known what he was doing. He's 23. He's been living on his own forever. It's not like he's 17 and living at home and he's telling me everything he's doing. He's living his life, right? And yeah, and the one cop was sitting there with his hands over his crossed and was falling asleep like I was disturbing him. It was awful, awful. Like, do you know what he was doing? Do you know where he was and what kind of things he was up to? And I'm like, he was 23, he was working, he lived on his own. I don't know. I know he struggled with addiction, but it wasn't like he shared that with me.
Just so little, so just not enough compassion when dealing with
Right? No compassion. And compassion would be nice because I just found out my son died. Like, this was my child. It wasn't like it was my friend or anybody like that. It was my child. Have some compassion. I'm sorry. I felt like I was keeping him awake, and to ask me what he's doing, especially over 18 years old, they live on their own. They're living their own lives.
Yeah. One thing that stood out to me from your story was when you said that, like, he was really, that you think that he was with that woman because he was reminded of you and he really wanted to help her.
Mm-hmm.
And that just really says a lot for, like, how even when people who use substances are in their worst of times, they really do try their best to help the people around them.
That's one thing that I've always can say about him. He had a golden heart. Like, he really did. He would give you the shirt off his back. He's just an amazing kid. Like, I'd get people that went to junior high with him that didn't go to high school with him that were messaging me and saying, like, I loved him. He was a great kid. He used to help me in school when I was being bullied. He gave me self-esteem. He did this for me. And even when he was walking with his friends, it didn't matter what age he is. Like, boys, they usually don't talk to the mom. He'd be like, hang on a sec. I got to go say hi to my mom. And he'd come over and give me a hug. And there was one story that I'll never forget. He was 15. He left home because he was addicted, and he thought he knew the world. So I had to let him go, right? Because I had his brother at the house, and it wasn't healthy. And I was like, well, you can go figure it out. I'll be here when you're done. I was standing at a bus stop 2.5. I didn't hear from him for 2.5 years. Worst 2 years of my life, obviously. But then standing at a bus stop, all of a sudden this car slams its brakes on this kid, comes running out, and he hugs me at the bus stop, and he's like, Mom, I'm so sorry. I love you. I'm okay. I'm doing good. I'll come and see you. Here's my number. Let's get together. And that's when him and I reconnected. Was at that time he was 17. It was like an amazing story.
Yeah,
I'll never forget that day.
Yeah, at a certain point, you can't control what people are going to do. You just got to be there for them when they need it, right? That's literally
Yeah, and that's kind of what I had to do. It was hard when he was 15 because he was so young, but I was like, you go do your thing. You think you know the world? Go ahead, right?
Yeah. And there's a horrible expectation that you spoke of, especially talking about your interview with the police officer who really should have been there compassionately telling you something, that is so life-changing and so horrible. And I hear it all the time, like when there's this expectation on parents or partners or friends to somehow know everything that's going on in their children's or partners or friends' lives and somehow be able to exercise some control over it. And, it's such a strange thing, and even when they are young and under your household, I've seen so many kids that were still straight A students in school that were using, and their parents had no idea, and how dare they say that you should have known.
Well, yeah, and I feel like it's almost insulting too, because it's
It is.
like you've been like, like every person that loves someone will do whatever they can and has tried everything they can. So that assumption that that you should know everything or that you have control over everything is harmful.
It is. He tried to go to treatment. He tried to go to Compass Residential's treatment center, and they wouldn't take him because he had a pending robbery charge. They said he was too violent, so they wouldn't even take him in rehab.
Oh my God. How is that a common thing that you experience trying to access care for him or any of the other
Yeah.
people that you work
Just
with?
for him, more or less for him, and some of the girls that I worked with. Actually, I have a level 5 girl. She's got violent charges right now, and they won't take her at Compass because they use the quote unquote, oh, we don't have enough staff to be with her. Like, you don't understand. This girl was addicted. Same with my son. He was addicted at the time. He was high or whatever. I'm not making excuses, but he was not in his proper mental state, and this is what happened when he was trying to get his fix. Like, just because they do something, they have a past. Everybody has a past, and I wish they would understand that.
Well, and see it for the medical issue it is. Like, if you look at people's brain scans, they're different when dealing with addiction. They're different when they're needing a fix. They're going through like a biochemical reaction.
Yeah, exactly, right?
And it is just such a crazy thing that recovery is only available for so-called quote unquote perfect people, and
Yeah.
it's something that we struggle, and I've struggled with trying to help my friends get care, and even the work that me and Jess have done in the medical system in regards to, like, we have purple dots here, which are a indicator of violence when somebody has accessed health care, which could be something as simple as swearing at a doctor because they're going into full-blown detox and nobody's paying attention to them. It's this issue that happens when people do have a history of substance use, that there's an inherent belief that somehow they're just horrible people through and through. And I like to think my family and my friends and the lovely people that I deal with through work aren't. I know they are. So how do we change this belief, and how do we correct it and show people that somebody dealing with a substance use issue isn't a bad person?
Exactly. I find that they're very judgmental too. As soon as they know that they have an addiction or they have been struggling with anything with use, they will say, oh, you're in a drug psychosis, even if they are actually having a mental health issue. Like, I have one girl, she's like, I know I got something going on, whether it's bipolar or schizophrenia. This is not me coming off of meth, but they'll never listen to me.
Well, and the issue is, even if it is just them coming off meth, they're still having a psychotic episode. Like, that's still real. There are still real life consequences when that happens. It's not just invalid because it's caused by substances.
Exactly. That frustrates me so much. I get so frustrated when I've been in emergency and they're like, oh, they're fine. They send them home because they have staff at home that can watch them. But no, we can't. They need to be in a safe environment like a hospital. That's why we bring them here.
Absolutely. And there's something else as well about your son's story that's sticking out to me. It is something that I have unfortunately seen and experienced with losing my own friends, and is after a longer term recovery, there's very little aftercare for people. So you get out of your treatment, you get out of your halfway home, and then you're out into the world. And the majority of overdoses happen with somebody who's been sober for a long period and is potentially starting to use substances again. What would you think could or would help somebody?
It's like you said, the aftercare is so important, especially when they're coming back. Say they've been gone for a year, they go into treatment, they're gone out of the city for a year. Even just having somebody supporting them coming into the city maybe once a week just to get used to being in the city again or being around those people instead of just throwing them into an apartment or wherever they're going and saying, okay, good luck now, you're done. They need that aftercare, and they need like a 24-hour, even a 8-hour support during the day, or somewhere they can call when they're struggling, that they can just say, hey man, I'm having a hard time, and that person will drop whatever they're doing and come and see them, whatever they need, take them for a drive, a coffee, even like just candy, because candy I find works lots. Kids, people want
Yeah.
candy. If they could just have that person that they could talk to over the phone, or know that they could talk to, like us FaceTiming, I mean, it makes a huge difference. I would think if he would have had that support, I think that he might still be here. I really do.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking this time and sharing your story. I really appreciate it. I'm really touched by it.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with us or touch on or leave anybody with?
Just that, we're all going through the same thing, all of us that are in this community, and we just need to stand together and keep fighting as much as we are, and eventually, hopefully one day we can do something. Like, I would like to open a grant in my son's name for people over 18 that want to go for treatment. I just don't know where to start. That would be something that I would like to do, and I'm always here if anybody else wants to talk, because I've been through it and I understand what they're going through, and I know it's hard. And we all have good days and we all have bad days. I still do. It's been 4 years and I still have bad days, but I have more good than bad now.
Absolutely. Well, we will definitely be thinking about him on the 11th. And did you want to say his name?
Yeah, his name was Cameron Shaver. He was born July 17th, 1993, and he passed away September 11th, 2016. That was my baby boy.
Thank you.